So I wanted to give some context to this recording. First off, we recorded it in a closet, and part of me wants to sit down and really make it sound amazing because there's a little bit of an echo on my side, but the other part of me doesn't want to. So I ran some filters, and I think it's fine the way it is. Secondly, this discussion that District Attorney Ben and I were going to have was originally planned to be very different. I was chairing an HA meeting, Heroin Anonymous meeting in Gloucester. It was my last one. The speaker I had came out kind of earwormed into my head, and what was supposed to happen didn't happen. It's still a wonderful discussion. I really enjoyed it. I'm hoping to have him back on again, but it kind of more turned into a therapy session than it was supposed to be a discussion on morality because of what happened beforehand. Still, I love it. I think it's great, and I really hope that me and him get to sit down again. But I just wanted to say, River, this was not supposed to be a therapy session. And hopefully when Ben comes on again, it will be a little bit more pointed and on track. And if you don't like the audio, I'm sorry. I just really don't want to fucking engineer it. I really don't want to. But I think it sounds fine anyway. I'm getting better. Episode 4, it's kinks and whistles getting worked out. So enjoy! All right, and welcome to episode, I believe this is going to be 4 of Teaching River. River, you are 1,258 days old, and I am here with District Attorney Ben. Well, yeah, District Attorney Ben is fine. Dab, well, I gotta roll with what I know, So we're going to talk about morality, and to kick it off, technically, I owe you an amends as per my program. Yeah, I know though. So it is on my 4th step. A couple years ago, we don't need to get into the details, but we had a tiff, and I handled it improperly. And, and then went off on a heroin run. And basically what you said something to me that was very honest, truthful, and spot the fuck on. And I wasn't ready to handle it at the time. And I apologize for the way that I handled this situation, because I definitely handled it wrong. You're probably searching your brain for what it was.
No.
Okay. So just basically, I apologize. You were spot the fuck on with what was going on, and I apologize. And if there is anything that I can do to, mend our relationship, or I don't even know if I damaged it, but I apologize, sir. As far as
The incident concerned, I mean, eventually it got to a point where because I knew you were going through a hard time, I felt bad for my part of it, because I was vulnerable and I was reacting to what you were doing and I was lashing out, even though it might have been saying things that you weren't ready to hear. You still weren't ready to hear them. So that was something that I wasn't happy about. And of course, I mean, water under the bridge, man.
Cool. Yeah. Good. It's been something that other people in our friendship, I also basically, for River, not too much of the background, but we were working on a creative project. I was spiraling out of control, and they were trying to help me, and I didn't handle the situation like an adult because I wasn't ready to at the time. But I appreciate. Let's shake. I appreciate it. And
yeah, of course.
We'll move forward.
Of course.
The reason I'm doing that now on air is because we're here to talk about morality.
And we're about to hate each other again. I can tell.
Yes. More accurately, probably debate heatedly. So,
I don't know about that. I don't know if I have strong feelings.
Okay. Well, that'll be interesting. I'd say a couple months ago, I emailed you and was asking about morality because being in recovery, I wake up every day and I need to say to myself, let's head out on good intentions. You know, it's kind of like a mental thing in the morning. I go, I'm going to do my best not to use today. I'm going to try and help somebody in my life, however that may be, and I'm going to try and be a good person, which for a normal human being that's not an addict probably is kind of ingrained in them already. But because of my background as an addict, I just tend to be an asshole in everyday life, and I have to, you know, it's just a mental thing in the morning that I need to try and check. And of our group of friends, Judge Mike and you are like the brains. We've always gotten along because that Mike is like the technological sort of brains, and you to me have always been the emotional smart. Like you've kind of always been in tune with emotions and feelings and thoughts and philosophy. And you know, so you were the guy that I wanted to talk to about this. Was like basically the dry open question is, you know, how do you what I emailed you was, I'm worried for the fact that I need to wake up and do that every morning, that I have to try and make a conscious effort not to be a dickhead. I'm worried about how I'm going to teach River to, you know, I'm hoping that she isn't an addict like me. But, you know, I'm worried about how me as a person who has done terrible, stupid things is going to pass along morality to a young woman. And, you know, so where do you think morality comes from? Because for me, when I look at myself, I think in my experience with kids in general, especially River, kids are born with like an innate goodness. And this is my opinion. I think that, you know, society sort of grinds good and bad out of them. You know, society has a big input on who you are as a person. And like, where do you think for you morality came from? Because I never grew up with a religion, so my parents kind of really were heavy on logic and trying not to make emotional decisions. And I don't know.
Well, trying not to make emotional decisions is a good idea. Like if you're deciding whether to buy a house and like it's based on whether you, I don't know, you bonded with your real estate agent there, like that's a bad reason to buy that fucking house. And that's good for that. But family decisions, I mean, your emotions and your logic, I actually like this. There's not many things from Ayn Rand that I find original or interesting, but this one I actually tend to like. The idea is that if your emotions, if you're properly thinking through things, your emotions and your logic should actually align. They should push in the same direction. Okay. Because if you have, let's say let's say reasonably you should do X, but your emotions tell you should do Y, that might mean that you just haven't fully thought out what you're about to do, and your emotions might be ahead. Like your subconscious might be ahead of your conscious thoughts. Okay. And that might be something you have to just either go with your gut or like a split second decision, like, should I do this? Should I not? That kind of thing. You know, maybe it's going on a date with a girl or something like that, like choosing to go out with a partner. Someone says, hey, do you want to go have a drink? And you think, oh, shit. I have work tomorrow, but this feels right. Okay, yes, fine. Let's go. Let's do it. Maybe in situations like that, it's okay to listen to your emotions. But for the most part, for like big, important decisions, your logic should be doing your work for you. But when it comes to what's right and wrong with people, like interpersonal questions, that's very emotional. That's very much, well, what do I feel? It's very much about being genuine, being vulnerable. And your logic helps you, you know, piece through the consequences of how you feel about things. But how you feel about things should play a pretty big role. Okay. Like, why do you, like, you care, I assume, about what happens to River because you care. That's an emotion. That's not There's no reason behind that. Like, there's no...
Well, so, okay, let me throw it in of, like, obviously she's my daughter, but when you say that, the idea that comes to mind is, and why I'm doing this podcast in general, is because I feel that I made a decision. Her mother and I sat down. We made a long, hard, thought-out process of we're going to bring this human being into the world.
Sure.
So I feel as if I have a responsibility to do the best I can. And that is a logically based decision because my emotion was I want to do this.
I'm not saying that there aren't good reasons to want to protect your daughter. What I'm saying is I'm just guessing that you have a strong compulsion to have her live a good life.
Yeah.
Like, it's not something like you could give me good arguments. You could give me great arguments probably. But you have a feeling of connection or maybe even indebtedness.
Yeah, yes, that would be accurate, yes.
Right. So...
Is compulsion and responsibility...
Yeah.
What do you think? Is there a difference there?
Well, I mean, you can get slippery with compulsion. Like, you could compulsively, like, knock 3 times on every door you pass. But a sense of responsibility is compelling. You might understand that you are responsible for paying your light bill every month, but you understand that by bringing a child into this world who never asked to be a part of this world, you just brought them in without their consent, that on an emotional level, and the fact that they're a part of you, all those things can combine to a kind of responsibility that is compelling on a deep, deep level. That's emotionally compelling. It's a part of your underlying values.
Yes.
And those actually, I think, closely relate to what I think morality mostly is. And I think that we have our values are our values, and those can run into what society thinks we should value. Those can run into what religions tell us to value, and they can run into what we, in some aspect of our mind, we have expectations of ourselves. We think we ought to believe X, Y, and Z, but we don't, and that can create all sorts of conflicts. But
so what's your background, just so River knows?
So
you jumped right in, and there's a reason I'm talking to you, and if you don't mind giving that background.
Right. So I went to school for philosophy, but I specifically got interested in a guy by the name of David Hume. And David Hume was a Renaissance philosopher who focused in skepticism and reason, and he also had a very powerful, compelling moral argument that is basically... it still shapes the way that moral discussions happen today. And he was very influential in the way I think about things, and... my background is philosophy, very philosophy strong. I ended up doing my senior thesis on David Hume and his moral argument.
So then perfect, this podcast is born from, I've always considered myself an amateur scientist, and science drives me. What drove you into philosophy? What caught your eye?
Naivety. Yeah. I saw the big questions and I wanted the big answers.
So at what point does young Ben decide, for me, in one of the episodes I'd say that probably around 10 is when 10 to 13 I lost my grandfather, and that made me go, what is life? When does that happen for Ben? Why?
Okay, what does it? I don't know. I mean, I probably had the average amount of family trauma and disruption in the household. I don't know if any of that was particularly compelling. I did lose my grandfather when I was around 10-ish. I don't know if that really pushed me into the philosophical sphere. I kind of was always just trying to be the smartest one in the room at any given time. So, because I felt that probably that was a distinguishing characteristic, and so like when you're young and struggling for an identity,
yes,
you cling on to whatever you have. So, yeah.
So then,
I would say I was always the kind of person who was trying to have the best answer to the hardest questions. And the biggest, hardest, most interesting questions are questions about religion and morality and all that kind of stuff. So I was the kind of kid who, like, when there was AOL chat rooms and like kids getting like picked up by predators, I was in like the religious ones being like, God is dumb, you believe in a zombie Jesus, that kind of thing.
Okay.
I was like the typical, teenage, I wasn't an atheist, actually. I was brought into atheism via one of these chats where someone finally was just pushing my ideas farther and farther, and I like didn't have any good arguments, and I was like, yeah, I guess you're right. I guess you don't need a God to make the universe work. Okay. And then I was like, I guess I'm an atheist.
When does that happen to you? What age?
Maybe 14, maybe 13.
Okay. It just for River to know, we're sitting in a closet in his apartment with clothes all around us. So we just kind of like dove right in. The one question I did forget to ask is if I ask anything that is uncomfortable, that you don't want to talk about, that you don't want the world to have,
okay,
please tell me. Normally beforehand I would say, hey, what's off the table? Where shouldn't I go?
I mean, I assume you can edit this, right?
Yes. Well, the goal is hopefully I don't ever really want to, but yes, if you said something you wanted out, of course.
Cool.
But do you mind giving your background? Were you raised in religion?
Okay. So I was raised Jewish-ish. Mm-hmm. Which we didn't keep kosher, we didn't keep the Sabbath typically. Like every now and then we would do a if we were doing like if we were doing Shabbat, we would go to the actual temple and like just do the prayers. We wouldn't do the whole dinner at home. We do the high holy days, and we a lot of times spend those with family, and still do. But we had bacon and eggs on the weekend, and it wasn't like it wasn't super Jewish. But again, that's also part and due to the town we grew up in, which was there was maybe 2 or 3 other Jewish families in there at the time. I don't know if there's any more or any fewer. I know the town is diversifying somewhat, but that's irrelevant. So yeah, I mean, Jewish-ish. My mother converted before I was born, so technically I was born Jewish, and that's it, because Judaism passes down the matrilineal line in a matrilineal fashion. I was born Jewish, so I got to go to Israel for free. But otherwise, some Jews, in fact, a lot of the very religious Jews, wouldn't consider me a real Jew unless I converted myself.
What?
Even if I was bar mitzvahed.
Why?
You're born Jewish. It's one of the only religions in the world that you were born into. Yes.
Okay. Now, I had this, when my grandfather passed away, I'm probably 12, 13-ish. I have this existential crisis about life, and I want to get into religion. Or I want to get into science, and as I'm starting to read science, this is the Google age, I realize I probably need to back up and go into religion. I start going into religion, and I also go, shit, I probably need to back up even further and look into philosophy. And so then several years pass as I kind of make my way through that.
Oh, interesting.
I am not in any way raised in a Jewish or a
religious
household
Gotcha.
At all. One of the religions that I do have a reverence for, even back when I was reading about it, was Judaism, because, correct me if I'm wrong, it always seemed to me as if it were more of a guideline. Like, hey, do this. We're not going to slap you. You're not going to hell if you don't. But it's probably the best. I always felt as if when I read Jewish text, it was always like, this would probably be a good idea to do this because it'll make you feel good.
Well, so there's a couple competing forces in Judaism that makes it, at least there are brands of it that are very much the way you're describing. So in one sense, the big renaissance of medieval philosophy was the rediscovery of Aristotle. So there's a lot of philosophical rigor and open-mindedness that is an undercurrent in a lot of Jewish philosophy and a lot of Jewish religion that has stayed with it. In another sense, though, Judaism has always been a kind of a boundary pushing religion where the discussion and the questioning has always been a major part of biblical study. That said, there are plenty of very staunch moralist Jews. We don't have the threat of heaven or hell, but they take living a religious life very seriously, and they do the best they can to live a life without sin. Now, is it comparable? Yeah, I mean, you absolutely can compare some of the craziest Jewish cults to the crazy, like Westboro Baptist.
Every religion has its crazy.
Yeah. But for the most part, Jews are a different breed than, let's say, your everyday evangelical.
Yes, that's something I noticed when I was younger. So then, like, how is that? Like, are you raised with? Is God being talked in your household when you're younger?
Well, when you're young, you're full of questions. So, like, I remember fuzzily, I remember asking my mom, "Well, where is God? Like, where is he?" And she actually kind of gave a really hippy dippy answer, which is maybe a product of her being a teenager through the 60s. But she was like, "Well, God's all around us." Gave this like kind of pantheistic answer, which is actually a deep, like resonating philosophy that even still today, I mean, it has a lot of ardent followers. Like if you talk to, so just a quick sidebar, if you talk to like Sam Harris's wife, and even Sam Harris, one of the biggest competing ideas for what consciousness is might mean that the universe itself is conscious, which is essentially pantheism.
Yes.
Okay, but these are people who are renowned for their anti-religious positions, these people who are, ardent critics of religion. It's a very interesting thing. Side note, just happened to be implanted into my psyche when I was a bit younger. But as far as like talking religion with my dad, I don't remember ever really doing that. We would talk about, I don't know, I hated Hebrew school. I hated all that shit. Like I hated having to go somewhere. I was not very popular. I was a little asshole. I was maladjusted to like social life and stuff like that. So like just social gatherings where I had to be with groups of people, I couldn't handle the group dynamic. It was very, very unsettling and I was very bad at it. So unlike, someone who's really smart and leans into the things they're bad at and becomes better at them, I would shy away from it. So yeah, I fucking hated Hebrew school. And I was a little punk there because, again, trying to be the smartest person in the room. And I wanted to push the boundaries there and see how far I could take it with those questions. Like, well, where is God? Okay, if God's everywhere, then why does he really care if I wear my hat in this room? Why do I have to wear my yarmulke inside the house of worship if God is really everywhere? This isn't his house. Every house is his house. It's kind of shit like that.
Yeah.
Right?
I love it.
Now, technically, they could have come back strong at me and been like, well, the Orthodox actually do wear their yarmulkes everywhere. And I'm like, well, then why aren't we Orthodox? I would have been an asshole anyway. It doesn't matter. I was an asshole.
So then, I'm trying to paint
where did I get?
Where do you then, a questioning young Jewish kid that has God introduced to him, when does then he branch to philosophy?
Branch to philosophy. Okay, so this is almost embarrassing. So I read what?
Dish it out, baby.
Oh God. I can. If Nick ever hears this, I'm never going to hear the end of it. Okay, so early on, I used to go to these soccer tournaments with my brother, and we listened to one of these books by a guy named Terry Goodkind. And Terry Goodkind is a fantasy writer, but he's greatly inspired by Ayn Rand. Ayn Rand was a 20th century egoist philosopher. So that was her ethical structure that she came up with. And he embedded that philosophy in that series, which, I read the series and all of a sudden thought, I'm a philosopher. I've got answers. Yeah. And it's actually kind of one of the things that got me to look into philosophy further because I wanted strong answers. And that was the beginning of me thinking about philosophy. But what really got me into it was I had just an intro class in county college.
Okay.
I was, fucking around, wasting my life, doing nothing at OCC. And, I mean, hey, great school, but it's definitely a great school when you're fucking around, you don't know what you're doing.
Yes.
to be there. Yeah, absolutely. Do something. But yeah, so I took an intro class and I found some really interesting answers to some really profound questions.
Example, please.
Okay, so I don't know if it's so much an answer as like a telling someone they don't have an answer. So the classic problem of evil, right? So if evil exists, how could an all-loving, all-knowing, all-powerful God exist? Because if he's all-knowing and all-powerful, then he can't be all-loving, because then evil wouldn't exist. And if he's all-loving and all-powerful, then he can't be all-knowing, because he can't know about the evil, or else he'd make it not exist. I mean, you see what
Yes.
so
Yes.
yeah, it's the classic problem of evil, right? And there's all sorts of rebuttals and fun things you can go from there. But when I saw that, I was like, ooh, that's interesting. What other kind of questions are like this? What other stuff has been thought? Like, I want to take a look and see what these other guys have to say. And, I was also always into science and things like that. And I knew that skepticism was a philosophical position, and I wanted to look more into that. So I then, dreamed up this idea of going off to college and either getting a philosophy degree and then falling back on a law degree, or getting a philosophy degree and going into being a professor and being a philosopher and thinking up thoughts and getting paid for my brain, which was cool. It was a cool idea to me.
So fun little side note. I love what I do for a living. I'm very good at it. I have pride in it. The lofty dream that I have now that I'm sober and I'm getting my life back on track and hopefully continuing to do that, I would love to, and so many people have been like, dude, do you really, you can't do it. It would take forever. I would love to get a degree in physics and teach it. I don't care at what level, high school or college, but when I'm done video editing and I want to retire,
you could teach high school physics right now.
I would love to. That's like a dream. So I get it. The whole it's so egocentric, at least for me, but it's also I just love the idea of passing on this knowledge to somebody. So you're not alone in that.
Well, getting a PhD in physics, I will say, is hard, but I don't think you couldn't do it. I think you would have a hard time probably just getting a job. It's not easy, even if you have a PhD, to just find something to do with that PhD. It's not easy out there for scientists.
So on that, what is your specific degree, please?
So I have a bachelor's in philosophy, and I have a JD, so Juris Doctorate in law.
Okay, what's a Juris Doctorate? I've never heard of that before.
It's a
law degree.
Yeah, it's a law degree, regular law degree. I mean, there's like LMs, so it's all the same shit.
Okay, so. I know I'm so jumping all over the place, but I know I can do this with you. That's why. So where does Ben kind of explain to me how you think? I'm going to tell you what I think, and you do your philosophy thing to it. I look at River when she's born.
Okay.
I'm just throwing shit at you.
I'll philosophy you, bro. Yeah. I'll fucking philosophy the shit out of this. Let's go.
So I see this beautiful young girl born, and I go, I have done horrible things in my life. I've been a shitty person. There's no way I can raise a good human being.
Scary.
Yeah, absolutely. And I melt down. It's famously told in this podcast, and I melt my whole life down. I get my shit back together. I try every day to continue forward on this path, and I think to myself, being that I've done amoral things, possibly that would make me a good teacher, because I know where somebody can go. But also, am I at all, equipped to handle the responsibility of another human being? And we kind of grew into the beginning of how we started our argument many years ago and why I had to make an amends. Please, however you're comfortable answering that. I didn't even mean for it to come out that way.
No.
How do you think that, is somebody that is capable of horrible things able to then teach somebody how to be a good human being? And
well, okay, so this answer isn't from me. Technically, I'm going to paraphrase a pretty controversial figure, a guy by the name of Jordan Peterson. You may have heard of him.
Yes.
And he was talking about how he wants to point out how if you look honestly into your heart, you'll be able to find that you too could have been a Nazi prison guard. Mm-hmm. And that's the horrible truth that most people don't want to face.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think there's something to that. I mean, I've always been pretty upfront with like my own capacity to do harm.
Yes.
And I think what's the line? The line of good and evil runs through the heart of every man, or something like that. Uh-huh. I think that's mostly true. And I think having done things. Well, I'm sorry. I want to go back and ask about your question. You asked, having done those things wrong, will you be able to handle the responsibility? Ask your question again. I'm sorry.
Being, I'll even take it off of me, of somebody, doing an amoral act.
Uh-huh.
Are they capable to raise or teach how to be a good person? And that's something that I struggle with. Is like, can I mean, even just with sponsorship, like, I don't know if I on a daily basis. I know I'm jumping all over the place. I am schizophrenic. I didn't come out about it until a long time ago, and I've gotten a lot of help from it. I don't take medication because I have a wonderful therapist that's helped me manage the symptoms. On a daily basis, because I don't take medication, I have to ask myself, 100 times a day, are my motivations correct? In this thought, in this action? It's basically, in AA, it's a 10 step. It's saying, am I doing good in my actions? And if I'm doing wrong, I need to promptly say that I'm not, and apologize and correct myself. Mm-hmm. And being that I need to do that, hundreds of times a day, I need to ask myself, there's a lack of confidence in the inherent goodness inside of me. So I fear, being able to help somebody. I know that I am capable of great things, but I also am like lack of self-confidence in that, and it makes me like wonder, like, would I be corrupting somebody by trying to help them? I don't know if that's making sense to you.
Well, okay, so are you ever confused, not about fringe cases or cases that are gray or murky, but are you ever confused about cases that appear staunchly black and white to almost everybody else?
Confusion in what way?
You see a baby in a puddle splashing around, no one else is around. Do you pull the baby out of the puddle?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. So it seems to me that your moral compass isn't just spinning in circles.
No, not anymore, no. It did for 3 years when I was using drugs, but drugs were certainly an influence on that, yeah.
I would say, I'm curious, do you think even then, had you seen a baby splashing in a puddle, you would have just been like, and kept walking?
So I in that particular instance, no. But there were certainly times when I was out there where I knew deep down inside I was about to about to rob somewhere to get money to get my drugs.
Okay.
I would be standing there and going, this is wrong. I shouldn't be doing it, but fuck it. And I go do it.
Wait. What did you just say? But fuck it.
Okay. What does that mean?
But that came out wrong. But what does but mean though? But means I know better. But means, you even said it. I know better. Mm-hmm. It's not that you didn't have the value. It's that something else you valued more at that time.
Yes. Okay.
So what you really have to be concerned about is not that you don't have the values. You do. Mm-hmm. You just have to make sure they're in the right order.
Okay, I see. Okay.
So when I'm eating Chinese food, as I just did, I'm valuing the mouth pleasure more than me eating healthy food, which I know I should be eating.
I got it slightly hard from you saying mouth pleasure. Keep going, sorry.
So I know better. Intellectually, I understand that I should do X, Y, and Z. But at the same time, I say, fuck it. Now, if I continue to do that, I'll get fat like I did. I don't know if you saw me when I was fat. Probably not.
Photos, yeah.
Okay, you've seen photos, but you actually never saw. Okay, so I got fat, which I don't recommend. Don't ever get fat if you're listening. But yeah, if I continue to do that, I'll get fat. But more often than not, when I go to eat something unhealthy, I do an evaluation and I think, I don't want to be fat. I'm going to go with the healthy thing. It's the fact that you said, so many times a day I have to check in and think, am I doing the right thing? Yeah, that's how you get about.
Do you do that on a daily basis? Like, for example,
for eating, sure. It depends. Certain things are automatic. Okay. So like brushing my teeth, that's automatic. Not doing heroin, also automatic. Like certain things come automatic to me. They're easier. Not everything though, right? So not like there's a pile of laundry over there. Should it be there? Of course not. I'm an adult. It's not automatic.
Okay.
I'm not as good at managing my time as I should be, and I know that. There's no excuse there. There's no but. That's just it. Is it a problem in my life? Not really. If it became a problem, then I would have to address it. And the good thing is, I said this is what family's really great for you. So people talk about, do you want your friends to call you fat? I don't care about it. That's what family's for. When your family goes, hey man, you're getting fat, then it's time to lose weight. Then you know. So when it becomes a problem, when the people around you who are close to you are saying, hey man, you got a problem, like what's going on? It's a real fucking eye-opener, and it's very, very helpful. But for the most part, people want you to be an independent person. People want you to figure out and make life's mistakes and learn from them. And I think that's a good thing for the most part. I think there are many ways in which that is, like you said, you made the mistakes, you learned, and you have the potential to be able to teach from those mistakes. And I think that's true, and I think that's a good thing.
As you're speaking...
what's not making sense to you?
No, it's making sense, but my brain is going, and how we started this discussion via email a while ago. Please explain to me and River what the fuck morality is. It's something that I can't seem to totally wrap my head around, because you're kind of opening me up to that. It's actually very therapeutic to hear this of like, there's... life is gray, I'm sort of hearing. It's not a black and white. For an addict, that's difficult to understand. But life so gray. What the fuck is morality? Please.
Well, no. So there's absolutely no grayness in certain questions. Like certain questions.
Example, please. Should I eat?
No. Moral questions. I'm talking about moral questions. Okay. There's absolutely no gray. When I say moral, so I try not to use the word moral, but in what you mean by moral, there are certain questions we have no question of, and one of those questions that is not a question is, would you fight to protect the people you love? And my answer is yes, of course. Would you kill people to protect the people you love? And my answer is I fucking hope so. Would you die? Again, I fucking hope so. I don't know. Am I a coward? I've never had to face that situation, and I hopefully never do. But I hope so. These are moral questions, but they don't seem at all gray to me. They seem like the easy ones.
Okay.
There's a sliding scale of what questions are easy to answer and hard to answer. So, what kind of wars should we support?
Okay.
What should we vote for? What should we get behind?
That's morality?
Sure. War is the concept. We were just talking about killing, life and death. Every war. I mean, you show me a bloodless war, I haven't heard of it. So, yeah, deciding whether or not to prop up a
belief,
not even a belief, to prop up an institution that is literally killing people is a decision. It's something that carries weight. Now, will I say it carries moral weight? No. And if you want to ask me, you ask me a direct question. You ask me, what is morality? And my answer is, I don't think morality is what people think it is. Morality, if you ask someone like, if you ask Plato would say, there's the form of the good, and the forms exist in this ethereal realm outside of reality. There's like the physical universe, and then there's the forms where everything exists in perfection. Like whatever makes 3 3, there's a perfect 3 out there in this realm of the forms, and it is the most perfect 3 you've ever seen.
Forms,
like a form, like a
form. Okay.
Like a form you fill out, a form of my final form, like that kind of thing.
Okay.
So the form of the good is whatever the good is. It's the good itself. It's an actual thing, a thing with its own unique property that is what, like 100% whatever the good is.
Yeah. And
by corresponding to whatever that good actually is, we become more like the good. So think of the form of the shoe, whatever the perfect shoe is, by conforming more to that, like when a craftsman is making the best shoe ever, it's because he's getting closer and closer to building the form of the shoe. That's the idea. And the good would be something like that. So good acts resemble whatever, you're getting closer and closer to whatever the purest, simplest form of the good is. That's the idea. That's how Plato would talk about it. And interestingly, this is kind of what Christians and even most theistic people who have God as the good itself believe. They think that God literally is the good. God's commandments are literally good, and by conforming with them and by conforming with God's will, you are getting closer to that form of the good. They are, in a sense, Platonists. In the way that I just in that kind of loose connection way that I just described, right? You have the guy trying to make the shoe. Yes. You have us trying to make the godly deeds. Yeah. I don't think that exists. Mostly because I don't think that like a God who is aware of us or is concerned about us exists. Even if you want to go as deep as pantheism and say like the universe is God, okay, but like that God doesn't care whether you masturbate.
Agreed. Now, so I don't want to sidetrack you from that, but that's actually something that I've battled with people in AA of. I identify as an atheist, and a lot of people feel that to be good, to be a good AA, to be in recovery, you need to believe in
a higher power.
And because, yes, higher power is the technical term. I'm getting more. I'm thinking of a specific group of people. I mean, be more broad. But like for me, I don't think God, a higher power, anything has the monopoly on morality.
Oh, interesting. So why do you think that?
So for example, there's
is it like without God you still wouldn't do X, Y, and Z, so therefore God is not the.
So yeah, but the reason I say that is because I grow up without a God. And I think that no matter the deeds I have done, I still knew right from wrong.
Okay.
And I feel like there's a lot of people in the world that think that God is good.
Right.
And that to me, I just think like. Again, I'm an atheist, so it just rubs me the wrong way. I don't think that.
Right, it's insulting. It's kind of insulting, right?
Yes. I think that when I'm hearing that, and I've certainly heard it from mutual friends that I respect and love, and I don't feel that they're trying to insult me. But to me, it's like, how are you going to say that something is an absolute? I don't think there is any absolutes in this universe. There's very few, and. There's no way that's where kind of this whole journey for me dives from is like, I'm trying to form my question here, but like, do you agree or disagree? We'll leave it as broad as that religion and God hold a quote unquote monopoly on on goodness, because the thing that I worry about is I know unless her mother has changed, River is going to be raised in probably about the same. My goal is through this podcast to give her as many options as she could choose.
Right.
And I feel like if somebody says that to me, you're saying that my daughter isn't good because she doesn't believe in God. Well, she doesn't believe in God yet, and if she decides to do that, I have no problem.
Right.
But so then that's where the question for me comes in of well, what is morality? Where does it come from?
Right.
Because I see this little girl being born and an inherent goodness inside of her, and I'm sure you've seen it with a child and your dog. There's an inherent goodness, I believe, inside of people. Do you, as a philosopher, believe in that?
No.
Okay.
Well, I mean, and not even as a philosopher, just as there's an inherent goodness in my dog if you're not a rabbit.
Okay.
If you're a rabbit, my dog is gonna fuck your life up. He'll tear you to shreds. Not because maybe he's not mean, but he doesn't have a concept of mean. That's not really a thing. It's because his body tells him to, and he gets real excited. And he sees the runny thing with the fluffy. He wants to chase and sink his fucking teeth until it snaps its neck and tears its guts out. That's what he wants to do.
So then, what is good and bad?
What is good and bad? Good. Well, okay. So, interesting question. Good and bad, essentially, are ways that we as cultures have grown to talk about the things that we value and disfavor or disvalue. So, I mean, we tend to value things like family, things like meeting obligations, responsibilities. Societies are typically built on that, so that's a pretty big one. Friends, time, right? Time's a finite resource. We value that very dearly. And these are values that take varying precedence at different times in our life for different reasons, an assortment of reasons. Also, different cultures have, nuances. Like some value the rights of women, others don't. But, excuse me.
Is good and bad relative to the observer as space and time are?
Well, it's interesting because people think people think everything's relative by the theory of relativity, but that's actually not true, right? The one thing is absolutely constant.
Yes, speed of light, first episode.
Right. So,
that's it. That's where, when I think about this stuff, and I hear people say that God is a whole other thing, and to me, that's why the first episode was that, is the only fact that I can say for certain is the speed of light. Everything else is questionable.
I think you can. Is there some sense in which there really is no ultimate answer of what is right and wrong? And I would say probably, yeah, but that doesn't really matter to me.
Why doesn't that matter to you? I mean, just there was a slight emotional uptick in me when you say that. I'm like, well, I think that, the scientist in me is like, well, I think at some point we could prove that. So.
Prove it. I'd like to see that fucking math. Damn. If you want to get a PhD real quick, publish that paper. Yeah. So why do I think there's no ultimate good and evil? Well, mostly because we haven't been able to come up with one, right? I mean,
okay.
We've been at it, and not just so. Skepticism is old. Skepticism is really old, like old, like ancient Greece old, and there have been people trying to fire back at the skeptics since then, and they've had varying success, but no one's really done it. So like when you were talking about, you don't have a good sense of what the good really is. Like you're not 100% on what it, like you're having trouble thinking about it and describing it. Well, I wanted to say, well, yeah, you and like every other human in the world, right? And there's people who have varying degrees of confidence that they figured it out. But I mean, if they were really right, I mean, maybe we wouldn't know, and that would just be unfortunate. But I feel like if they were really right, the proof should be in the pudding. There should be one answer. There should be no debate. And the fact that debate has carried on this long, gives us an answer that maybe it isn't. Maybe we saw. I think in part what morality really is a kind of hubris, that we saw other animals in their niches flourishing in various ways, and that we wanted to think, well, there's something more for us. There's something grander in the design. And whatever it is, it's more than just, making a bunch of copies of ourselves and dominating the land and building high buildings. It's good. What's good? Well, it's like, it's what we were put here to do. Okay. Well, who put us here?
Yeah.
Who writ this into the fabric of the universe, right? The idea, if there's something objectively good, that means it's good in a way that doesn't really depend on whether or not we're here. And that...
Oh, okay. Wonderful.
Right, so... The speed of light is the speed of light. All humans could die tomorrow, and the photons that are flying from the sun and traveling through the asteroid belt of our solar system would keep going on their way without having noticed at all. Our masses haven't really moved substantially. They're all still here on Earth, so the photon just keeps going. Good would have to be something like that, I think. Good would have to be something, not a photon, not an electron, but it would have to be something that just doesn't depend on us. And I don't know that I can think of anything that fits that description, right? There's no real room for that in the standard model or in quantum physics that I'm aware of.
So then, my question is our collective consciousness the decider of the reality of good at that time?
Oh, so well, I mean, just matter of factly, yeah, I mean, that's the way government works, right? Government tells us what we can and can't do, and that's mostly based on what the people in the given area think is right and wrong, right? I mean, that's how it works. What's right here, well, okay, not what's right here, but what's legal here is different than what's legal in Iran or China or New Zealand, right? We have different rights, different things will incur punishment. Different things, even if there was no punishment, different things would incur praise, and different things would get people rounding up torches to burn down your hut. And that's whether or not we really know what's right or wrong. None of those people know. They think they know. I mean, I think I know. You asked me, I can tell you. And when you asked me, I believe my answer was, well, do you want to know what I think?
Yeah.
Because I don't know what I know. I don't know if I know anything about morality, but I know what I think. And I gave you my answer, and it was long and rambling and probably didn't make a lot of sense, but it's because it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I mean, you're having trouble with it. I have trouble with it. But I'm not super disturbed by it. I used to be. I think
so how do you then get to a somewhat, because I'm in the...
Well, what do you care about?
I care about my daughter. I care about Kelly.
Wait. You could list 6, 7 different things, right?
Yes.
So you know what you care about.
Okay.
So then why are you worried about whether it's good? Does anyone else wildly disagree with what you think is good?
No, I think the biggest good in my life is maintaining sobriety, and everybody agrees.
Do you trust?
I'm a better
Right.
person when I do that.
Do you trust the people around you?
Yes. Now, yes.
Okay. So then, what are you worried about?
Whether or not I know my sobriety is definitely right, but whether or not the person that I am, I want to offer this girl that I'm doing this for the best possible...
Wait. Doing this for or doing your life for?
This and the life that...
Are you not doing your life for you?
I believe that when I created that girl, that doesn't matter anymore.
Ooh, okay, so what... Has anyone suggested that it's possible... I think back to one of the meetings, and someone was saying, one of the ones we were at, some person was saying how the disappointment of their child was crushing.
Yes.
And it nearly drove them over the edge. Do you think, if you're not doing this for you too, that you'll have what you need in those times?
So,
and in a sense, doing it for you is also doing it for her. That's where I'm trying to get you to.
Yes.
To cut this all short.
I totally agree with that. Where I messed up in the podcast itself, like what I'm trying to.
Okay.
I tend to, I married the two ideas, but like I'm trying to offer the best resources I can.
Okay.
So she can make the best decision she can.
Great.
And like I mean, basically, I know it's a discussion, but like I don't know the answers, and it terrifies me that I don't.
So
that was quite an honest, like totally slipped out of my mouth, very honest answer to or statement, I should say. Yes, it terrifies me that I will not be able to give her the best resources to.
Would you be happier with false confidence?
I think I would know that it was false.
Yeah, right.
Although I am very good at lying to myself. It does crash apart.
It's the easiest person to lie to.
Yes.
And the one you lie to the most, typically.
Oh, 100%, yes.
So, I'm sorry, because I'm thinking about this in real time. So,
yeah, pauses are fine.
It's good that you worry. It's good that you're terrified. I'm not sure. I never want to be an incurious person.
Agreed.
And though there's a comfort that comes with belief and knowing the answers and thinking you have the answers to the big questions, it seems to me, a poisonous incuriosity.
Okay.
That doesn't mean that I think that people who have faith or think they have the answers to these questions, even secular people who think they have the answers to these big questions, are incurious in all times, in all ways, or that they are unintelligent, or that they can't provide very good arguments, because that's what religious apologists do. They provide very powerful arguments, or they try to. And I spend my time looking at them. I mean, I still look at them because I'm still interested. I'm still curious. There's part of me, a cowardly part, that would love to have the answers and be done. But my heart just isn't in it.
Okay.
And that, I guess, the existential dread that you describe.
Yes.
Hums at times, but for the most part, it doesn't really bother me, because I know that I've never read anything in a philosophy textbook or from a quote I've seen or read or heard from a YouTube discussion, doesn't matter, that's ever dramatically changed the way I feel about the people around me and the life I'm living.
Okay.
And by that, I don't mean that these ideas don't change the way I behave. They do. But at the same time, there's more to me than that. So even if I had the answers, let me ask you a question. If it turned out that you found out there was a God and there was this objective good, but let's say determinism is true,
okay,
and the feeling of love you feel for your daughter is completely just a part of his design. It's completely his doing, not you. Do you love her any less?
No.
Okay, so what are you worried about?
I think that's a beautiful end point. I shouldn't be worried about anything because the feeling exists no matter what.
Ooh. You just put something up for me to knock down. Okay.
Please.
You should be worried. You should be terrified.
Okay.
Because
why? To me, in that scenario.
Oh no, not of that. Not of that.
Oh, okay.
Not of that. Of ever losing. We all the time lose track of what's important to us and lose track of the things that should be motivating us. I told you, I just ate Chinese food. I shouldn't be eating Chinese food. We lose track. You should be terrified, but I think you should be terrified about different things.
Okay.
Because I think you have goals, and I think those goals sound as admirable as any, and I think you trust the people around you, and you're in a good place there, and it seems like you're heading in a good direction. So if your daughter has big questions, I mean, there's plenty of resources you can point her towards. That you don't have to say, well, we think things through with logic and with, there's plenty of, the big questions have been asked 1,000 times by 1,000 people, and you can go over those and look those up and learn with her even if you don't know them off the top of your head. But for the big basic stuff, you have a good idea. And if you want an easy guidepost,
please,
to just a shorthand, it's the best one that humanity's ever come up with. If anything has lasted the test of time, it's the fucking golden rule, man.
Okay.
You know that. It's so obvious and cliche. It's cliche because it's fucking genius.
Uh-huh. Who came up with that?
It actually pre-existed Christianity. So it was not Jesus, unfortunately. Or
Is that
fortunately.
From, the eye for an eye? Did it come out of that sort of?
God, I hope not. It's so barbaric, but maybe it might have come out of the same society. It might be Mesopotamian. I don't actually know. I looked it up once. I just know that it predates Christianity, so they can't take credit for it. And don't let them. Don't you dare let them. They'll try. You watch. I'm sure they talk about the Sermon on the Mountain. Yeah, okay. Fuck that. It pre-existed Christianity, and they know it does. Okay, so yeah, the golden rule is great shorthand. But another thing I like to think about, so like I'm a pretty radical guy. I have some pretty radical political beliefs, and another thing I think about is would I hire someone else to do it? And
what?
So, okay, would I do the thing I hire other people to do for me?
Oh, okay.
So it's not about just doing unto others as I would have others do unto me.
Would I tell somebody else to do that?
Yeah. No, am I comfortable doing the things that I have other people do on my behalf? So remember I said before, like voting for war.
Okay.
That kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
Well, what's the war for? Well, we need, we want to feel more secure. Well, all right. Would I personally go out and kill people to make myself feel more secure, like right now?
Uh-huh.
Which people? Where? Who? Why? There's a bunch of answers to questions I really need to know before I would go do that myself. And I don't think those answers typically those questions have good answers or have been properly answered. I feel the way I do about most government things because when you use the government to get something done, you use the coercive power of the state, which means ultimately it's backed by violence, the threat of violence, not violence itself necessarily, right? So when you
very big stick.
Well, yeah. So when you tax someone for Penn Jillette put it this way, and the great magician, moral philosopher Penn Jillette, he said what most brought him into being a libertarian, a bleeding heart libertarian, as he likes to say, is his friend asked him, well, would you use a gun to get it done? And think about that in terms of any of the government functions that they perform. And if the answer is no, then you probably shouldn't vote for it. Now, there's no necessary connection there, right? So if you're not emotionally capable of, let's say, killing your own chickens, maybe that doesn't mean that eating chickens is wrong. But I think maybe you shouldn't. I don't know. There's something compelling about it. If you can't do it, maybe it's not for you. And maybe having someone else do it and paying them to do it or hiring them to do it isn't how you should be going about living your life. Maybe there's a reason that your body and your mind is telling you, hey, this isn't for you. And maybe that reason, by ignoring it and putting it off and basically having a third party do it, is somehow making the world worse.
You did give me something now that all day tomorrow I'm going to be thinking about. We're going to have to regroup on this, and because, yes, okay, that's a very interesting.
So,
very interesting.
Penn puts it like this. Would I give money to open a library? Yes. Yes, okay. Would I work to raise money for a library? Yes, okay, I'd do that. Would I lie to have a library open? Well, I think the library is very important. Maybe I'd lie. Would I steal? Probably not. I don't know if I would steal, but would I hold a gun to someone's head and force them to pay for a library I want built? I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think I would do that. Okay, so if I don't think it's okay for me, or if I wouldn't do it myself, why should I hire someone else to do it for me? Why should I support a tax that's going to build a library? I could, if I really like the library, I'll donate to the library. So like, for instance, I donate to Planned Parenthood. I think Planned Parenthood should exist. I'm extremely pro-choice up to a point. It gets philosophical and dumb real quick. Don't worry about it. The bottom line is, I believe in that institution, and I would perform an abortion myself, and I would support it. Do I think tax dollars should go to Planned Parenthood? Well, no, I don't think so, because I don't think I would hold a gun to someone's head to keep it open. Even though for many people the topic of abortion is life and death, right? For pro-life people, it's, life and death is on the line. I wouldn't have our tax money go for that, and that makes me a little different. Now, that's how I look at pretty much all government institutions. And, you can convince me on certain things like healthcare, things like that. If we're going to have a government, why not have it do the things that we all value, like health, well-being? Okay, sure. But I still don't know. I still don't know if I would, again, hold a gun to someone's head and force them to pay for a sick person. I would donate my time to help a sick person. I give blood to random people. I don't know. I'm not out there on the street. I give it to the Red Cross, right? Let's be clear. There aren't people coming up just asking for my blood.
And if they are, it's probably not for good.
No, they're up to something.
Yeah.
Take that advice. If someone comes up and asks you for their blood and they are not a medical professional, do not give it to them.
It should also be in a medical setting. I think if Annalise came up to me in her scrubs and said, I need your blood, I'd be like, wait, hold on a second. I trust you, but that's a little shit. Let's go to the hospital.
Right. So the golden rule is a great one. And would I do it myself? I think those two questions are pretty powerful and can really affect the way you look at the way you interact with the rest of the world. And I think off of that, you can build a pretty expansive and compassionate worldview. Like, because you have to ask yourself, well, what kind of world do I want to live in? And by treating others as you would want to be treated, you're actually creating that world that you aspire to live in. That's the idea, right? So another little piece of wisdom that Jordan Peterson imparted was a truly selfish person. Some selfish people can be parasitic and just thrive off of the good work of others. But for the most part, a smart, selfish person, someone who's truly selfish, is going to figure out how to be selfish in a way that benefits the people around him. So at least the people around him keep him around long enough so he can continue to be selfish. And if he really wants to do it, he wants to expand that circle to his community. Because once he's valued in his community, then he can be truly selfish and he can benefit off of all his relationships amongst the community. And by expanding that circle and making it bigger and bigger, by thinking about the long-term consequences of your actions and how they will impact you and how other people will trail in your stream that you cut through the river of life, you can, in a sense, be altruistic in a selfish manner. And scientists, behavioral scientists, and evolutionary scientists will call this, it was reciprocal altruism.
Okay.
The idea that it's really, I do good for me because at some point I think, almost like karmic, it's going to come back and help me. Now, it's not this like mystical idea of karma. It's very much a practical, you do this podcast, Grant, you'll edit my podcast for me one day if I ask you to. Something like that,
It's
quid pro
Let me throw
quo.
in the question of like the idea that an AA is if I stay sober and be very selfish in protecting that.
Oh yeah, they tell you to be selfish, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Very selfish in protecting that, the path towards that and maintaining that. Because of that will expand to my family in a positive way. And it was something very difficult for me to understand. I was I've been selfish by putting a needle in my arm. What are you talking about?
No, not to your future self. Because that's a person. Your future self is a person, and if you're really thinking about them, if they're you too, then you have to think about the consequences of your actions. If you're naive and you can only think to the next second, then yeah, sure. I mean, bliss is bliss, but
is that reciprocal altruism? Or
no, that's a type of egoism. That's a type of way of thinking about just in the long term. But reciprocal altruism, the idea is that you build a community and it expands based on the fact that it doesn't necessarily help me when I don't litter. But when I choose to not litter and I embrace other people who do, and other people see me not littering, I live in a cleaner neighborhood. That's how a neighborhood stays clean.
Okay.
Right? So when you merge in traffic, reciprocal altruism is, technically I would get home faster if I fucked over everybody and always didn't let someone in. But if everybody does that,
nobody's in it anywhere. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So the question is, how do you realize where those situations are in life, and how do you make more of them and answer them in the right direction? How do you let someone merge more often? And if you let someone merge more often in your life, and everyone does this, not even everyone, if just more people do it, it's a better place to live. And realizing that is a part of maturity, realizing that is a part of learning and growing and being a real adult, as they say, adulting, as our generation says.
So, I want to say, I didn't mean for this to be like such a therapy session for me, but I'm still going to be selfish in asking this. Like, so give me a task.
Give you a task?
Give me something.
Bring me the horn of Everclear.
Give me something that I can do tomorrow that would greater expand my moral.
You still smoke cigarettes?
Vape.
Okay, you can still do something. I was going to say, if you smoke a cigarette, walk all the way to the trash can and throw it out.
I smoke cigarettes when I'm at a meeting. So tomorrow I probably won't smoke a cigarette, but next time I...
Throw it out.
Okay. I normally do, but not every time, but I do.
Do it every time.
60%. Okay.
Just do that.
Okay.
It's not moral. I don't know if it's good, but I know would you rather live in a cleaner world? You want your daughter to live in a cleaner world?
Yes.
So people need to start throwing out their cigarettes, right?
Yes.
So why don't you?
Because I'm an asshole. Selfish.
No, you're not being properly selfish.
Ooh, mind blown. Right there. I think you saw it. Right? I was like, oh, fuck. He's right.
I mean, I would like to say that I have thrown out every cigarette butt that I have smoked over the past year. And I could say that 99% honestly. But I was 1% an idiot. I wasn't being properly selfish. And you know what I noticed? It was after the fact. It's just in a social situation where one dude threw a cigarette, and usually I go, don't be that guy. Just fucking throw it out. And what sucks, because you're the one dude who's walking to throw it out, and they're like, oh, Mr. fucking saves the world over here. Huh? Thinks he's fucking Captain Planet. No, fucking just throw it out. Just throw it out. And if you want, if you really want to rub it into them, if they're being assholes, pick up their fucking butt. Throw that away too.
So I want to do this again because this went totally off a track where I wanted it to go, although I'm very happy with where it went. I want to do this again.
Okay.
That was great. I am going to do that. I'm going to try, and before next time we meet again and do this,
okay,
my personal goal is to every cigarette that I smoke and I'll report back honestly whether or not I achieved it.
Okay. I will say, don't beat yourself up if you just like unconsciously forget.
My therapist has been very much programming.
I mean, don't ruminate on it. Yes. Yeah. If you literally just forget,
yes.
Like if you consciously go, nah, and put it on the ground, that's that shame is shame that's like, oh shit, you fucked up. There's useful shame, and then there's things that you just beat yourself up for and hate yourself, and it's just negative and bad and destructive. But I guess figuring out how to channel that is all part of your therapy.
Yes.
So I don't want to interfere with that. Don't listen to me. Yeah. I'm not a trained professional. Never mind. Forget what I just said. Forget it all.
No. You're actually very in line of what he's saying with stuff. The one thing that I'd like to that I've been asking people when they do this, if you could go back to the Ben at 12 years old.
Okay.
What do you say to that kid, and we'll end the show? What I don't give a shit what it is. What do you say to him?
I love you. Hang in there. And you got good people around you, even if you don't realize it.
Beautiful. Cut.